Welcome back, guys. I'm wondering, have you ever had the situation that you have a good melody, like this for example, and that you have a nice beat, like this, but when you put it to the arrangement, it just doesn't seem to work, right? There's no flow in the track. Well, that's something that happens sometimes, and it doesn't have to do a lot with where you put the elements and how you build up your track, right? But there's something else that decides if a track has a real flow and you can follow the story of the track, and that is transitions. So in the background, you're listening to a little jam of this melody and a drum beat that has no transitions at all, or no good transitions. And today in this video we're going to talk about what is a transition, how do we build it, and how do we also avoid using like typical white noise riser samples from Splice or any kind of snare rolls, right? And instead use something that is more unique and also fits better with our songs and elements that we have already. So today is going to be about transitions. Let's go. So in the intro, you've been hearing this part of the arrangement, right? Now I want to show you the other part, and let's see how we changed up a little bit of the elements to make it nice and smooth and have it some good transitions, right? So there's three variations of transitioning that I want to talk about today. Let's start with the first one, which is going to be using your percussions to make transitions, right? So if you have a look at the original loop or like original draft here, which has like this clap, for example, kick drum. You might be thinking that's not really the sounds to use for transitions, but that's actually not true. There's actually a lot of ways to use them in transitions, and I want to show you some of them right now. So first of all, what we have here, just in the middle of those 16 bar, right? So we have a 16 bar package. This is arrangement theory, right? Techno and all the electronic music happens within this 16 bar scheme. And then every 8 bar, there's always like a little change, but it shouldn't be too strong because you have to focus on the 16 bar, right? So you can see that perfectly here, that we have those big 16 bar packages, which always have this little, like, there's no kick in the end, right? And then there's only some tinier transitionings, like also you can see this here in the automations, but we're going to come to that. Or here we just leave away one kick. So that's the difference between the 8 bar and the 16 bar transition, right? So here we just wanted something tiny, and that's why I just went for, right, this is actually our clap pattern. It looks like this. And what I did here is I just added some more notes, and it sounds like this. And only this little variation in the clap already makes us feel like this is the end of 8 bars, and now we're repeating another 8 bars. But what's added here is this rim, so it kind of makes sense to the listener now that another element is added and it's not just randomly coming in like here, because the people kind of know where the 8 bar ends and where the next 8 bar starts, therefore, and they expect something to happen. But if you don't really introduce it with a little transition like this, then there will not really be the feeling of conclusion and also like being back in the loop, right? So also another example is the clap roll here. So what I did here is basically put it to 8 notes first and then to 16th note. So it's very typical stuff, right? Coming from the quarters. A little bit of velocity playing. And there we go, right? Just a simple transition making everything a little smoother again. While here, there is no real movement and difference in the pattern at all, which doesn't make the listener feel like there will be something to wait for now, right? Here it just sticks to the same energy level and the same kind of percussion level as well, if you want to. And here, what happens is when the clap starts to move faster, you know, the listener knows that, okay, something's building up, right? So the transitions are always very, very helpful and very useful to kind of indicate to the listener what you want them to feel right now, because it's not always so obvious just from your synths maybe that you're like going to a new part of the song, right? So another percussion transition I want to talk about is a very typical one. It's those double kicks here. So usually we would just have a kick like this, right? This is the typical quarter kick, right? Like for every bar. And now what we have here, we can also consolidate this into one clip to see it a little better, is we have the first two, and then we leave away one kick, and then we have a double kick afterwards. That sounds like this. It's often used in like any kind of housey styles, but also in techno it works very well. Sometimes you would even, I'm just showing this to you real quick, we have a longer loop now, right, 4 bars. And sometimes what would happen in a track is that you would have something like this, for example, and this would maybe repeat also here, but without this one. So this is also some kind of transitioning, but in a smaller way. But here we have, as I said before, the 8 bar, and at the end of the 8 bar, we just leave away a kick and then have the double kick to put the listener out and back in. And this will keep the loop, so to say, because you can see here the same thing is played all over the place. This will keep this interesting for the listener. While here, in comparison, there is no like transition at all. So when the hi-hats come in, it doesn't really feel like something has progressed, but rather it's just a loop that is standing still, and then there's a hi-hat added to this still standing loop. So next I want to talk about the automations, especially the delay reverb automations, and also the comparison to white noise, because one of the most obvious transitions is to use white noise risers, white noise downlifters, right? We all know them and they work very well. I even included one here. But you don't always have to use this, right? So what I want to show you today is that this definitely works at some points, and it really also depends on the other elements you have already. Like for example, if your synth already have a lot of noise because you used a noise oscillator, for example, or it's like very FM-y, then there's not really a need to add another layer of noise. While here, for example, our sound, this goes together perfectly, right? But what is happening actually? It's not only the white noise, right? If we have a look at the automations here, we can see that in our first loop, right, without the transitions, we only have a little bit of cut-off automation here, and then the release is just a little up on this drop. And in our second version with all the transitions, we have some sends over here, A and B. We have some sub-octave on serum. And yeah, let's look at this. What is happening here? So maybe the first one over here, there's just some echo coming in, and this is super interesting because it happens together with the percussion of the clap here, right? We can check it out together. So what the clap and the chord step do together is they kind of lift everything up just a little bit and then bring it back down so the rim can come in smoothly and the loop can continue to run, right? While here we also have some echo coming in and then some reverb added as well. And this is especially interesting because there's like a little gap in the beat, right? And we use this gap to open our lead sound even more with the reverb, make it super diffuse and big, and then bring it back with all the percussions and hi-hats to like no reverb, not too much dimension, being more upfront again. So let's have a listen, maybe all together. Right, and to emphasize this even more, we have this shift of the octave. So this sound, just for you to know, it works like this. We are only playing one note, right? For example, here we play the G, but the sound turns it into a chord because we have the +3, the +7, and the actual note with the sub oscillator. So what it does is it turns the G into a G minor, right? Everything is turned into a minor chord. And this is very nice for those kind of ravey, housey chord steps, right? You don't have to worry about music theory or putting notes too much. And by the way, all the sounds, actually the whole Ableton file is available for downloading right in the description. So you can also check out this sound and also how the MIDI pattern works. So here we lift up the G one octave higher, right? So it sounds a little more bright. And this is interesting, we do it right in this gap here to emphasize even more that there is like, we go away from the beat, go a little higher, and come back down to the beat. And then, first of all, we have a repetition of this little 8-bar transition here with the echo, and then we have another rise, which is more focused on the reverb, right? Here we only have a little bit of reverb. Here it builds up much longer and creates like a lot of tension. And that's also like supported by the envelope release, right? So the release is also a little more up, right? So the sound feels a little longer, and together with the cut-off opening here for sure, this creates this super big and massive sound. And what this shows you is that you don't always need this noise, right? You can also use the reverb, for example, to have something rise up. For example, if we have a listen to the reverb only here, right? I'm soloing this reverb now. This is already like some kind of riser, right? It goes higher and higher and gets more brighter. But instead of just being white noise and all over the place frequency-wise, we have something that is actually like kind of similar to a lead sound already, which makes it sound like pleasing to the ear. And the last category that I want to show you is also a very important one. It's probably something that you have been asking yourself already when watching this video. There is a difference in the MIDI notes of our lead sound. Look at this and then look at this. So we can kind of see the same structure. Right here we have this pattern with the G and the G sharp. And here we have the pattern only with the G. So this is kind of the same. But then every now and then, and it's actually not every now and then by like, you know, any kind of, I mean, it's not some sort of miracle that the notes are there, but it's rather because this is an 8-bar package, so we have a little add-on, and this is a 16-bar package, so we have a bigger add-on, right? So this is not a miracle, this is very planned, and this is what I want to show you now, that you should vary your lead to create transitions. So there's 1,000 ways to do that, and since we have a chord lead now, it made a lot of sense to do this kind of stepping up game, because the chord stays around the root note actually when it plays. So now here, if we do this, it kind of lifts up. It's not only a transition just because the note changed, but also the note goes up, right? We could also do this the other way around, for example, and switch it. Like we could put this here, 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 and here. And now this would be more like putting you back down. Could also be nice. But to be honest, in this case, I would stick with what I had before here. And you can see that this variation kind of repeats somehow here again, but it's a little more extended. And then we also have those little ones repeating again, and they sound like this, right? They basically only add this one note here. And this again concludes the 8-bar loop kind of, and it goes together with the echo that is rising up here and the percussion. So you can see that it's always like a little, I mean, it's on the same spots, right? We have those 8-bar loops and those 16-bar loops, and it's always kind of connected to this structure, which is because electronic music works in this structure. So you really have to keep that in mind and always ask yourself, how am I transitioning from this part to another, right? So for example, here we have something similar. Again, we have one note added after 8 bars. And on this note, I've also added an automation of the reverb, so it feels a little more opening a space and then closing it back. Right, this pulls you again a little more far away and then back to the beat. So this is always what we try to do when we're making a transition, like putting the listener away or like kind of higher or something. Those are the words that describe it very well. And then back down to the beat, back to the kick, maybe the hi-hats coming back in and the groove taking you further. And yeah, you can really see that this is a lot of like differences here. And for the end of the video, I want to play it to you once again so you can compare it a little more, and you should definitely check it out at home in your session, right? Download it on your Ableton and check out all the different transitions and try to implement the ideas in your tracks as well. So those were some first ideas for you guys to make your transitions more interesting and also more natural. Instead of just using some reverse samples from Splice, do them yourself, right? Record that reverb, turn it around, use the reverbs and echoes you already have to build something up, use the percussions you already have to build like little percussion switches, right? And think about the 8-bar and 16-bar scheme, and you're always going to have a much better and easier time to put your ideas into real arrangements that actually tell a story, because the story oftentimes is not only about your main character but also on how he gets from one place to another, right? So with that being said, have a good time, keep making music, and see you very soon.